The nerve!
You ought to be hung.
How's that? Hey, look, Sheriff, I've been looking all over town.
When mentioning Hollywood legends, you can't cross out Dan Blocker. He was famous for his role in Bonanza, having played Hoss Cartwright, the heart and soul of the television series. However, when he died, he left not just a legacy, but secrets that will leave your jaw open. Now 66, Dan Blocker's son has decided to unveil decades of secrets, confirming all we've suspected. What has he revealed? Let's find out. Record-breaking arrival. Dan arrived in this world with a big bang on the 10th of December 1928 in the town of DeKalb. Weighing 14 pounds at birth, Bobby Dan Davis Blocker still holds the record as the largest baby born in Bowie County, Texas. So, the beloved actor we know as Dan Blocker started life surrounded by an aura of fame. When Dan was young, his parents, Ora Shack Blocker and Mary Arizona Blocker, moved to O'Donnell, Texas, about 40 miles south of Lubbock, where former farmer, Shack as he was called, managed to gather enough money to open a grocery store after losing everything in the Great Depression. In the early years, the family lived in quarters at the back of the store, and young Dan helped out, carrying groceries to customers' cars, among other tasks. At the age of 10, he had already grown to an outstanding 6 feet and was larger than any of the kids his age. According to one source, his father used to kid around with friends, saying he would pay them to hire Dan. Because of the boy's size, he was wrecking the store. Dan's father once told him, "Son, the rate you're growing, you're going to be one hell of a big fella. If you use your size and strength properly, it can be a wonderful thing for you. If you don't, heaven help you. One day you'll start pushing some little guy around and he'll pull a gun and blow your brains out." But his size, which was considered an anomaly, especially for a kid his age, would soon prove to be his ticket to stardom. At age 13, Dan enrolled in the Texas Military Institute. At school, due to his size, he decided to join the school's football team. This decision of his opened doors for him in ways he never imagined. He ended up as a linebacker on the football team due to his exceptional skills. In 1946, Blocker played football at Southern Baptist-affiliated Hardin-Simmons University in Abilene, Texas. His skills on the gridiron earned him a scholarship to study at Sul Ross State Teachers College in Alpine, Texas, where he was to play football and study English. There, he was a star football player and graduated in 1950. At age 18, he stood at 6 feet 3 inches and weighed nearly 300 pounds. He would grow another inch and gain a considerable amount of weight as he matured into adulthood. Blocker worked as a rodeo performer and a bouncer in a bar while a student. He's remembered from his school days for his height of 6 feet 4 inches and weight of 300 pounds. Aside from that, he was also remembered for being good-natured, despite his intimidating size. His size and athletic prowess may have gotten him a chance at an education, but now it was going to change the course of his life in a way he'd never imagined. At one point, the drama club was staging Arsenic and Old Lace, and they needed a stagehand strong enough to move the heavy dummies used for dead bodies in the production, and Dan fit the bill. He fit it so well that they convinced him to play the small role of Teddy Brewster, the delusional nephew of the murderous spinster aunts, the protagonists in the play. Once he got a taste of being in the spotlight, the audience response, and Dan was hooked. He came to discover a new passion that he did not know he had. He later changed his major from English to theater. After graduation, he reportedly turned down offers to play professional football. Instead, he headed east to pursue his acting career on stage, performing in summer stock and repertory theater shows, eventually landing a small role in a Broadway production of King Lear, The Clarion's Call to Battle. On the 25th of June in 1950, North Korea invaded South Korea. They rapidly advanced southward, trapping South Korean and American troops in a small perimeter around the port of Pusan. The United Nations was quick to respond and immediately encouraged its members to support South Korea. Many countries sent in troops to the south, including the United Kingdom, Canada, India, New Zealand, and South Africa. Dan was one of the recruits for the war. He left his family, friends, and dreams behind at his country's command and went off to fight in the Korean War, where he served for 2 years. Of course, Dan's recruitment into the Army came with its unique challenges. For a month, the Army struggled to find boots that were big enough for him to wear. Once this situation was resolved, Dan officially began his military duties. War was no joke for Dan. The explosions and constant sound of enemy gunfire became the order of the day in his life for 2 years. He watched people he knew and cared about die, and had to end the lives of others for the sake of peace. But all the hellish conditions of battle did not break his soul. Instead, they revealed the kind of man Dan was. In the heat of battle, Dan risked his life on numerous occasions to save his comrades who were injured, often disregarding his safety. Amidst chaos, his pure soul shone brightly, serving as a beacon of hope for his comrades. He was kind and took responsibility for his fellow soldiers, treating them like they were his family. Blocker had basic training at Fort Polk, Louisiana. In Korea, he served as an infantry sergeant in F Company 2nd Battalion, 179th Infantry Regiment, 45th Infantry Division, from December 1950 to August 1952. He received a Purple Heart for wounds in combat. In addition to the Purple Heart, Blocker received the National Defense Service Medal, Korean Service Medal with 2 Bronze Campaign Stars, Republic of Korea Presidential Unit Citation, United Nations Service Medal, Korean War Service Medal, and Combat Infantryman Badge. Dan, having seen the horrors of war, became a strong advocate for peace. In 1952, the same year, he was discharged from the U.S. Army, having attained the rank of sergeant. He married Dolphia Parker, whom he'd met as a student at college. Now, married, he chose a responsible path in life. Dan returned to college and received a master's degree in dramatic arts. Dan and Dolphia eventually had 4 children, twin daughters, Deborah Lee and Dana Lynn, and 2 boys, David and Dirk. After graduation, with a family to support, Dan decided to pursue a career in teaching. Blocker was a high school English and drama teacher in Sonora, Texas, from 1953 to 1954. He was a 6th grade teacher and coach at Eddy Elementary School in Carlsbad, New Mexico, and then a teacher in California. Blocker and his wife Dolphia moved to Los Angeles, where he secured some acting roles. It seemed as if each move as a teacher was taking Dan west, closer to his destiny. Dan settled into married life. He loved teaching and enjoyed being around children. He shared his passion for acting and language, perhaps touching the lives of the kids he taught in ways he might never know. By all accounts, he had a heart of gold. Though occasionally quick-tempered, he was also quick to apologize and admit when he was wrong. When he moved his family to California, it wasn't because he sought stardom and the adoration of millions of fans. He went on to study for his PhD in dramatic arts at UCLA while continuing to teach. He appeared in several hit series, among them Gunsmoke, The Rifleman, Have Gun Will Travel, and Maverick, in which he was given the chance to display his gift for comedy. He had a recurring role in the short-lived series, Cimarron City, in 1958. The cancellation of that show might have seemed like a blow at the time, but soon he would realize it was a gift. That was when he became available to take the role of a lifetime, the discovery of a legend. To help make ends meet in the mid-50s, Dan began auditioning for television roles and was cast in bit parts in westerns, which were popular at the time. This rekindled his love of acting, enabling him to transform into different characters. In 1957, Blocker appeared in a Three Stooges short, Outer Space Jitters, playing the goon, billed as Don Blocker. He made 2 appearances on Gunsmoke, first as a cavalry lieutenant on the 24th of August, 1956, in Alarm at Pleasant Valley, and on the 18th of October, 1958, in Thoroughbreds. He appeared in 1957 as Will in the episode A Time to Die of the ABC Warner Brothers Western series Colt. In 1957, Blocker was cast in episodes of David Dortort's NBC series The Restless Gun, as a blacksmith and as a cattleman planning to take his hard-earned profit to return to his family land in his native Minnesota. In 1957, he had at least 2 roles as a bartender in an episode of the syndicated Western-themed crime drama Sheriff of Cochise, starring John Bromfield, and in the film Gunsight Ridge. In that same year, he appeared in the Cheyenne episode Land Beyond the Law, playing one of the outlaw minions named Pete. He also appeared in The Rifleman. In 1958, Blocker had a supporting role as Sergeant Broderick in The Dora Gray Story on NBC's Wagon Train. That same year, he appeared in the Stagecoach episode of the NBC Western Jefferson Drum, starring Jeff Richards. In March of 1958, he appeared as Joe, a thief, in Season 1 of Have Gun Will Travel, in the episode Gun Shy. He was seen in The Senorita Makes a Choice, a 1958 episode of Walt Disney's Zorro series, as well as an episode, Underground Ambush, of Sergeant Preston of the Yukon, playing Mule Conklin. Blocker was cast as bearded, poker-playing rodeo performer Cloudy Sims in the 1 episode of Rodeo on the David Jansen crime drama, Richard Diamond, Private Detective. In the storyline, a rodeo performer named Ed Murdoch, portrayed by Lee Van Cleef, is murdered before he can make his final performance at the annual event in Madison Square Garden. In 1959, he played the role of Del Pierce in Johnny Yuma, the first episode of the ABC Western series The Rebel, starring Nick Adams. In 1958, he played a prison guard. He later had a recurring role as Tiny Boudinger in the NBC Western series Cimarron City, starring George Montgomery, John Smith, and Audrey Totter. The show was later canceled. While others may view it as a disappointment to Blocker, it was a blessing in disguise. The show's cancellation meant he was available for his role of a lifetime. The role of a lifetime, Bonanza. Blocker landed his biggest and most famous role in 1959 as Eric Hoss Cartwright on the NBC television Western series Bonanza. The middle son of the Cartwright family, Hoss was known for his large size and genial spirit. His role as the big, shy, gullible, and lovable Cartwright brother swept the audience away with his humility, innocence, and puppy dog sincerity. His brothers, Adam and Joseph, were played by Pernell Roberts and Michael Landon, respectively, while his father, Ben, was played by Lorne Greene. An enormous success with audiences, Bonanza ran for 14 seasons through the beginning of 1973, making it one of the longest-running live-action series in American television history. Blocker appeared in 415 of the show's 431 episodes before his passing. Bonanza was the most popular television series of the 1960s, ranked #1 for 3 straight seasons and spending a then unprecedented 9 seasons in the top 5. After Blocker's death, Bonanza, still in the top 20 with Hoss after being 8th the previous year, didn't last another entire season. He was reportedly discovered while making a call in a phone booth, dressed in Western garb, including a straw cowboy hat. His standard attire was that of a native Texan, which he had adopted soon after arriving in California. Even after being cast in Bonanza, he intended to complete his PhD, but the series' great success made that impossible due to the workload of over 30 episodes per year. This meant he had to work from 7 a.m. till 9 p.m., 5 days a week. If Little Joe was the heartthrob of Bonanza, Hoss was the heartbeat and the very soul of the series. The middle son of wealthy Nevada widower and rancher Ben Cartwright, Hoss was not known for his intelligence, unlike the actor who portrayed him. He was awkward and shy around women. He was easy to fall for a prank. But Dan brought to life a character filled with love and compassion, and Hoss was a favorite of viewers, especially the younger audience, who could relate to his love for children. Indeed, Hoss was somewhat childlike himself. One trait Dan and Hoss shared was a strong desire to fight for social justice. Dan played the beloved character of Hoss, motivated by this quote by the 18th century, French-born, American Quaker missionary Stephen Grellet, "We shall pass this way on earth but once. If there is any kindness we can show, or good act we can do, let us do it now, for we will never pass this way again." During his years on the set, Dan became good friends with Lorne Greene and Michael Landon. His TV family was just like a real family. They were together from 7 a.m. till 9 p.m. 5 days a week during the season, and often socialized off the set. Dan was the best man at Michael Landon's wedding to Lynn No. Though the shooting schedule of Bonanza took up most of his time, Dan did manage to appear in several films while he was still on Bonanza. In 1963, he appeared alongside Frank Sinatra, Lee J. Cobb, Molly Picon, and others in the comedy Come Blow Your Horn, based on the eponymous Neil Simon play. Blocker reunited with Sinatra in 1968 for the crime thriller comedy Lady in Cement, an adaptation of the Marvin H. Albert novel of the same name and a sequel to the film Tony Rome. The same year, Blocker starred as blacksmith John Killebrew in the NBC television film Something for a Lonely Man. He went on to star as another blacksmith, this one named Charlie, in the 1970 Western comedy film The Cockeyed Cowboys of Calico County. That title was Blocker's final film. Although he had been cast in Robert Altman's neo-noir The Long Goodbye, he passed away before production began. Rest on, Dan Blocker. As the ratings of Bonanza began to increase, so did Blocker's popularity. The gentle Texas giant stole the hearts of the viewers with his charm and witty humor. He was known for his simplicity and kindness, and his character as a boss helped him to portray this side of himself to viewers. But then things took an unexpected turn. Dan was diagnosed with gallstones, which was not a complicated condition, but would require surgery. On May 13, 1972, Dan entered a Los Angeles hospital for simple gallbladder surgery. Nobody could have anticipated anything but a successful recovery and a return to another successful season of Bonanza. A few weeks later, Dan underwent surgery and all seemed well again. It looked like the dark cloud had finally passed, and Dan seemed to be on the mend. But then tragedy struck unexpectedly. A blood clot in his lung changed everything. Dan Blocker died, leaving behind a grieving wife and 4 children, a devastated cast, especially best friends Michael Landon and Lorne Green, and a stunned nation. Dan Blocker was just 43, and at the peak of his career. In life, Dan was an ordinary guy, a family man who doted on his children, loved his wife, and was loyal to his friends. He worked hard and stood up for his beliefs. He was dedicated to the craft of acting, but as a realist, he also knew he needed to provide for Dolphia and their children. He once said, "Fame frightens me. It truly does, perhaps because I wasn't expecting it. I feel like I have a tiger by the tail. I'm in this business for the money. I need money like anyone else because I want to give my wife and kids a good home and a good life. It's what any man wants to do for his family. I'm just an ordinary guy." While Dan loved his career, he hated the attention that came with it. He just wanted to spend his weekends with his family and act quietly on weekdays. But as the show gained more popularity and he became a household name, he began to lose his privacy. Everywhere he went, fans were always reaching out to him, aiming for a connection. As a result, his movements were restricted, and he did not have the freedom to move around as he wished. His passing left a hole in the hearts of many, and his fans mourned him. He was greatly missed, and it was felt on set. Eventually, the show had to be canceled as it began to lose its viewers. He was a star living in Hollywood, but he didn't live an ostentatious life, not even in death. He's buried in an unassuming grave in a plain family plot in Woodman Cemetery in DeKalb, Texas. The family marker reads simply, Blocker. His in-ground stone is relatively small and could easily be missed in the surrounding patches of grass and dried earth. It reads, Dan D. Blocker, December 10, 1938 to May 13, 1972. Nothing more. The gentle giant was known for his gentle strength and warm smiles. He was also a fierce protector of the weak and was careful when associating with people who were smaller than him. In Dan's words, being big has its advantages, especially when you're doing the rounds of the agents' offices. They don't forget you in a hurry. If I had been a little guy, I'd probably still be teaching school in Carlsbad, New Mexico. The writers of Bonanza took the unusual step of referencing a major character's death in the show's storyline that autumn. A 2011 report added that this was to be the first time in television history that a show had dealt with or even mentioned the death of one of its characters. Specifics as to the death were not discussed in the series, but some years later, in the sequel series Bonanza: The Next Generation, one character stated that Hoss drowned trying to save another's life. Bonanza lasted another season without Hoss, and the 14th and final season ended on January 16, 1973. That season was, by far, the least popular and least requested season in the show's rerun package. Bonanza co-star Michael Landon said years later that whenever he needed to cry for a scene, he would think of Dan Blocker's death. Blocker's remains were interred in a family plot in Woodman Cemetery in DeKalb, Texas. The common gravesite is marked by a plain stone with the name B. Dan D. Blocker engraved on it. 3 family members are buried beside him: his father, mother, and sister. Today, the grocery store where Dan swept floors, stocked shelves, and carried bags out for customers is boarded up, but the name Blocker still exists in bold letters, and a large yellow silhouette of a 10-gallon cowboy hat is painted where the entrance would be. A room in the O'Donnell Heritage Museum is dedicated to Hoss memorabilia, and nearby, a small lot in Courtyard Square has been converted to a memorial garden, featuring a monument dedicated to the memory of Dan, in the form of a life-size bust created by sculptor Glenna Goodacre. The commissioned portrait was installed in 1973, Dirk's Confession. It was no surprise to the fans when Blocker's sons decided to follow in his footsteps. His first son, Dirk Blocker, became an actor just like his father. In 1974, just a couple of years after his father's death, the teenage Dirk landed a role on the Little House on the Prairie episode School Mom, in which he played a shy, illiterate older boy whom substitute teacher Caroline was teaching to read. Dirk also appeared on another fan favorite, Matlock. He continues as a character actor today. His second son, David Blocker, won a 1988 Emmy for producing Don King, Only in America. As for Dirk, he finally confirmed what we all suspected. The 66-year-old, although he had an opportunity to rise to fame just like his father, has opted for a quiet life. Dirk Blocker is most well known for his role as Hitchcock on the NBC comedy Brooklyn Nine-Nine, while he was also a regular on the series Black Sheep Squadron and Ryan's 4. He has appeared in film roles such as Poltergeist, Starman, Shortcuts, The Prince of Darkness, and The Border, while guest starring in roles on television including Criminal Minds, The X-Files, MASH, Newhart, Murder, She Wrote, the original Night Court, and Little House on the Prairie. Even after numerous opportunities to rise to the top, just like his father, Dirk opted for lesser roles, preferring to avoid the spotlight. This confirmed what we all suspected. Dirk had observed his father's life as a star, and it had lost its appeal for him. He watched as his father struggled to live a life separate from work and maintain a form of privacy, and decided that that was not the life he wanted to live, the life of a friendly giant. Beyond television and film, Blocker launched and had partial ownership of the Bonanza steakhouse restaurant chain. The first location opened in Westport, Connecticut in 1963. A few years after that, the chain was purchased by entrepreneur brothers Sam and Charles Wiley. Dan Blocker owned several mansions at the time of his death, including a 5,000-square-foot house in the Hancock Park section of Los Angeles, which today is occupied by rock star Rob Zombie. He also had a home in Inglewood. Dan had to diet or his weight would easily soar above 300 pounds. He wasn't happy about eating like a normal guy, claiming he was always hungry. He remembered fondly the days when he ate a dozen eggs, 2 loaves of bread, and drank 2 quarts of milk for breakfast. He was part owner of the successful, once popular chain restaurant Ponderosa Bonanza Steakhouse, forming an even stronger connection with food. Dieting was something he did not enjoy, but had to do to maintain his physique while on the show. His weight fluctuations were drastic, with him gaining up to 378 pounds when he was not careful. There is a prominent beach, Dan Blocker Beach, in Malibu, California. The beachfront property was co-owned by actors Michael Landon and Lorne Greene in the 1970s. Landon and Greene donated the land to the state of California in 1979 and named the beach in honor of their late friend Dan Blocker. In 1995, the state of California donated the land and several other parcels to the county of Los Angeles. Blocker, a liberal Democrat, was among Hollywood celebrities who supported Pat Brown's re-election in 1996 as governor of California against Ronald Reagan. In 1968, Blocker backed the U.S. Senator Eugene McCarthy of Minnesota for the Democratic presidential nomination. Blocker later supported the eventual Democratic Party nominee, Vice President Hubert Humphrey, also of Minnesota, for the presidency against the Republican Richard Nixon. On the 2010 PBS special, Pioneers of Television, Westerns actor Mitch Vogel, who played adopted brother Jamie Cartwright on Bonanza, said, "Blocker was so easy to get to know, the kind of guy you could go and have a beer with." Blocker, a performance automobile fan, once owned a 1965 Chevrolet Chevelle, as Chevrolet was the commercial sponsor of the show. He also owned a 1965 Huffaker Genie race car, nicknamed the Vinegaroon. Nicky Chevrolet ran the car in the 1965 and 1966 U.S. Road Racing Championship Series, as well as the 1966 Can-Am Championship. He made an average of $11,000 for each episode and acquired a wealth of $5 million, which would have been equivalent to $25 million today. His story is one of strength and tenacity. It tells the story of a man who was kind and never gave up on his dreams. And we can see that legacy alive today in his sons as they work hard to continue their father's legacy in the American movie industry. What do you know about Dan Blocker? Share your thoughts in the comments. Remember to hit the like button and subscribe. Before you go, click on the video displayed on your screen.